A famous Chinese legal scholar once said, "If only one voice is allowed, that voice becomes a lie. Eventually, such lies will bring disaster to a country." The CCP is a prime example of ruling through lies. Its existence brings not only disaster to the Chinese people, but can also be seen as a calamity for humanity today. It's not a normal political party. Everything about it is built on lies and deceit. Let's look at some of the lies the CCP has told its people. The first and biggest lie is that China will become more democratic and free politically. But right now, the Chinese people aren't ready for full democracy and freedom because their qualities are too low. Anyone living in China knows that the CCP fears giving too much freedom to the people. In today's Chinese society, no matter where you are, the words you speak and the conversations you have are automatically filtered for sensitive content. Xi Jinping, the current Chinese leader, has seized all power. His low level of education makes him deeply insecure and lacking in confidence. His entire team of standing committee members come from a background of secretaries. Their strongest suit is to interpret Xi Jinping's expressions and act accordingly. How can such a team achieve democracy and freedom in politics? Therefore, the CCP will enforce stricter systems to control the speech and behavior of the entire Chinese people. They conduct 24-hour surveillance of the Chinese people, with the largest budget going to maintaining stability. In China, maintaining stability means creating a white terror. China's white terror will only become more severe. Only by desperately monitoring and suppressing the Chinese people can the great leader's power and safety be ensured. Moreover, the CCP has extended this white terror to Hong Kong. On March 19th, the Hong Kong Legislative Council quickly passed the National Security Law, Article 23 of the Basic Law, which came into effect on March 23rd. The enactment of Article 23 in Hong Kong is, following the National Security Law, a final blow to the cornerstone of Hong Kong's democracy and freedom. For those living overseas, especially those with families still in Hong Kong, the legislation of Article 23 is no different than a curse to them.
The freedom for the people that live there is decreasing, and it breaks my heart because had the West done more, we might have extended the period of freedom and autonomy for the people of Hong Kong, and sadly, that's no longer the case. Well, unfortunately, the situation in Hong Kong continues to deteriorate. This was such a special place for so long, and by the way, there were agreements in place that this was supposed to last for much longer, and the Chinese Communist Party viciously violated that by attacking young people, by beating protesters, and then ultimately by just breaking down the rule of law, right? The court system that for so long had been a place where the financial community, the global financial community had come, business flourished, that no longer exists and continues to deteriorate. And you can see that. You can see it in the willingness of businesses to come put balance sheet risk on their companies is decreasing.
Pompeo believes that as long as China continues to suppress human rights, including in Hong Kong, the U.S. government has a responsibility to stop it, including imposing more sanctions and enacting preventative laws targeting investments. He believes American businesses, big or small, will comply with these regulations. Pompeo pointed out that with Beijing undermining Hong Kong's rule of law, Hong Kong is no longer attractive to international investors because it has become indistinguishable from other cities in mainland China. One person commented that only by escaping China can one have freedom. Whenever someone promotes the idea that Chinese people aren't suited for democracy due to their quality, others inevitably bring up Taiwan as a counter-argument. If Chinese people supposedly lack the quality for democracy, then why are Taiwanese, who share the same roots and heritage, able to make democracy work? This proves that the real obstacle to China's democracy isn't the quality of the Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party. The second lie is that China will continue its reform and opening up policies. The international promotion and management mechanisms of the Chinese Communist Party have led to the rise of core management personnel whose primary skill is political scheming rather than effective governance. Within the CCP, formalism, flattery, and bureaucracy are rampant, characterized by corruption and exploitation of the people. This is a true typical portrayal of CCP officials. How can individuals raised in such a system achieve true reform and opening up? People like Xi Jinping are extremely fearful of change because the more things change, the less control they have. Xi Jinping wants to hold all power in his hands. If China continues to reform and open up, Xi will face more situations that he doesn't understand. He would need to delegate power to people who do understand these changes, but that's something he can't accept. For over a decade, Xi has worked hard to manipulate his way to grab all the power. Now that he's finally achieved this, asking him to share power is like asking for his life. So, how can he possibly allow reforms and openness? Now that he has turned all the country's wealth into private property and made the people slaves of the Communist Party, there's no way he will make any changes. Therefore, he must stick to being closed off. This is the only way someone like Xi Jinping can manage the country, which explains why the country has become the way it is since he came to power. Internet commentator Wang Jian said, "As a social contract, the legitimacy of the CCP's rule is based on ensuring people's livelihoods. When people can't make a living, the CCP's political foundation begins to crumble." During the White Paper Revolution, two slogans were shouted: "Step down, Communist Party," and "Step down, Xi Jinping." This situation exemplifies the CCP losing the people's support. The relationship between the CCP and the people is turning antagonistic, especially Xi Jinping, who has exhausted his early political capital accumulated from anti-corruption campaigns. No one pays attention to the so-called anti-corruption reputation of this glutton anymore, because it has destroyed people's livelihoods. The third lie is that China's laws will become more robust, moving firmly towards rule of law and strict law enforcement. Since the CCP came to power in 1949, it has always placed power above the law. The Constitution itself clearly states, the Communist Party of China is the only ruling party above all laws. In China, listening to the party and following the party is a prerequisite for all laws to be established in China, so the CCP itself is above the law. Judges in China are first and foremost political agents, obeying power and the party. They are merely tools in the hands of the CCP, used to satisfy personal desires and ambitions. Whenever they need to achieve a particular goal, they change or introduce a law. If they have ulterior motives, they issue a judicial interpretation to serve their interests. So, as a Chinese citizen, it's impossible to believe in the existence of law and justice in China. People like Chinese real estate tycoon Ren Zhuqiang and Chinese billionaire Sun Dawu are prime examples. The law is just a tool for satisfying personal desires, so gaining power and relying on power is the only way to obtain any rights in China. Local authorities don't even follow the law. Public security, commerce, urban management, and tax authorities all do as they please, as long as they bear the label of law enforcement. Recently, the internet celebrity under the account Teacher Li is not your teacher reposted a video that circulated in China. In the early morning of May 27 in Changzhou City, Shanxi, a giant poster condemning the courts was pasted on the signboard of a hotel near the Chenghuang Temple. According to local netizens, the poster was removed by 3 a.m. A user on X commented, "The public security, procuratorate, and judiciary have become completely corrupt. The procuratorate and judiciary, in particular, have become the most corrupt due to their ability to operate without oversight. They remain safe as long as their backers are strong. On the other hand, if their backers fall, it won't end well for them even if they aren't corrupt." The fourth and easiest lie to feed is that China will take on more international responsibilities, gain more allies, and continue to grow its foreign trade, while the US and West will collapse. On December 12, 2023, Xi Jinping made a 2-day state visit to Vietnam, one of his visits there every 2 years. Reuters reported that Xi signed 37 cooperation agreements during this visit. But despite that, the surprising treatment of Xi in Vietnam showed that even socialist countries now reject China. The trade rejection against China is evident. In today's world, over 80% of the global trade market is regulated by 4 major trade blocs: the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the European Free Trade Association, the ASEAN Free Trade Area, and the North American Free Trade Agreement. These blocs have essentially replaced the WTO's role. These 4 trade blocs have explicitly and decisively rejected China's application to join, stating clearly that China does not meet the qualifications, not even as an observer. Moreover, more and more countries are listing China as an axis of evil. From numerous news reports, it's clear that China supports the Taliban in Afghanistan, helps Hamas in Palestine build tunnels, supports the Houthi rebels, and, despite international warnings, provides logistical support to Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Additionally, China has supplied Iran with many advanced weapons, positioning itself as a center of an evil alliance.
中国对阿富汗的政策是一贯明确的。
On January 30th, 2024, Xi Jinping accepted the credentials of the Afghan ambassador, once again recognizing the Taliban's interim government. In September 2023, Beijing became the first country to send a new ambassador to the Taliban after they regained power. Netizens are mocking the CCP for colluding with terrorist organizations. Even Pakistan, China's so-called Iron Brother, is rejecting China. Chinese nationals in Pakistan are facing continuous attack. On March 26, 2024, a suicide car bombing in northwest Pakistan killed at least 5 Chinese citizens and their local driver. This was the 3rd major attack in a week targeting China's Belt and Road projects in Pakistan. Overseas Chinese are feeling increasingly unsafe. When you look at the annual ranking of visa-free countries, Western countries led by the United States dominate the top 10 spots. This year, China is ranked 65th. Meanwhile, Japan, a country often targeted by national hate campaigns, has held the number 1 spot for 6 consecutive years. The 5th lie is that the yuan will continue to appreciate against the dollar. More countries will use the yuan in the future and will eventually replace the dollar as an international settlement currency. To stay afloat, the CCP continues to print money like crazy in 2024, trying to manage trillions in debt. The more yuan they print, the lower the interest rates will be, especially as import-export trade worsens. The CCP's holdings of US dollars and US bonds are decreasing, while their dollar-denominated external debt is increasing. What could possibly make the yuan appreciate against the world's major currencies? In reality, the CCP is devaluing Chinese assets, products, and services. Professor Shenrong Qin from York University in Canada pointed out that China has started using the yuan for natural gas transactions, set up yuan trading hubs in offshore locations, and made deals with countries like Brazil to use the yuan for trade. This isn't purely economic. It's largely motivated by fear. After seeing Russia face severe financial sanctions from the US during the Russia-Ukraine war, China fears the US's weaponization of the dollar. The CCP is doing this mainly to reduce the use of the dollar, worrying that the US might weaponize the dollar to sanction China if it invades Taiwan. That's the real concern. Experts believe that claims of the yuan replacing the dollar are merely expressions of dissatisfaction with the dollar, a narrative crafted for both internal and external propaganda. The CCP is engaged in a global propaganda campaign to convince more countries to adopt this idea. Domestically, it's necessary to maintain the belief that the yuan is strong and there's no need to fear the US. One user remarked, "The CCP claims to serve the people, yet it often oppresses them. The government is called the people's government, the courts are people's courts, the police are people's police, and government officials call themselves public servants. Even the Stability Maintenance Forces are called the People's Liberation Army. But when people try to exercise their rights, they realize they've been deceived. To maintain this lie, the CCP creates new lies, leading to a vicious cycle, ultimately necessitating the construction of a firewall to keep people contaminated. How can the people not resent it?" Someone posted a riddle online which went like this. There are 2 large countries in the world. One has 1.28 million troops stationed worldwide, acting as the world's police and maintaining global peace. The other supposedly has 2.18 million troops, all stationed domestically. Solidifying the rule of 500 red families. The leader of the first country is labeled by the media of the second as a public enemy of humanity, while the leader of the second country claims to lead the world and establish a community with a shared future for mankind. People don't even need to guess to know that this is the US and China. Years ago, France's largest newspaper, Le Figaro, remarked that Mao Zedong's tradition of ruling through lies certainly did not die with him in China. The CCP's governance through widespread lies begins with fabricating numbers. Whether it's the COVID-19 pandemic or the so-called 3 years of natural disasters that starved 30 million Chinese, the approach is the same. Russian dissident writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote to Soviet leaders in 1974, "This universal, obligatory force-feeding with lies is now the most agonizing aspect of existence in our country, worse than all our material miseries, worse than any lack of civil liberties." Half a century later, the Soviet Union is long gone, but the CCP remains, along with its arsenal of lies. Since 1949, its entire history has been built on lies.